We're going over the commander cards that are most worth buying for the month of July.
I'm Mia, and I like seeing the sun at least once a day.
I'm BZ. I haven't seen the sun yet. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. Best way to buy cards? Card Kingdom. Best way to get free shipping on orders $50 or more? Card Kingdom. Name 2 more things about Card Kingdom.
Card Kingdom has sealed product and singles and everything you could ever need, and they have this really great deals page. So if you go there, you can see weekly deals that they have, and there's some really good discounts over there. Go check it out, use our link, tell them we sent you, and check out our recommendations on the site. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield. Best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
NERDS
at checkout, you can save 5% of your entire order. Real money tax dollars being saved right there.
I was definitely going to say something, but it all worked out. It's fine. Moxfield.com. Guess where the ad is? There's going to be one. You can't. This is unavoidable.
Liar.
If you guess correctly, you're a liar. If you guess wrong, you are an honest person.
Right.
And Patreon, no. Best way to support the channel directly if you want to send us stuff to get access to exclusive videos and podcasts and spell table gameplay that we can't put on this channel. That all goes to Patreon, and we're starting to get a pretty hefty library built up. So if you join at a certain tier, you can see all of it.
Help the sends the cats to college. Just really, it helps the channel and keeps the lights on. So we really appreciate you.
Okay, so this is the 27th episode of Most Worth Buying, which means we've been doing this for over 2 years, helping you buy the best cards for your commander deck, cards that have recently been reprinted that you didn't know about, cards that are just really good buys for Commander. We're not really talking about speculation. However, at the end of the video, if you want to know what we're personally speculating on, we're doing mini specs every month. Check it out. That's at the very end of the video.
I love Most Worth Buying. I really like to keep my eye on the market and that sort of thing because we always need new cards, whether it be for budget decks or for not so budget decks. So this is a really great way for us to share our knowledge with you. And the first one that is at a really good price right now is Apex Devastator at $9. 10 mana for a 10/10 that just says Cascade 4 times. That is a ton of value for the mana you're paying.
Yeah, this thing is often very explosive. It goes in the top-end green decks. It can be in a Cascade deck. You don't have to, though. If you're just in a big green monster deck, you can absolutely play this all day. I would say keep an eye on this one. $9 is a really good price for it, but there is a chance it goes down a little bit more. It was in the MH3 Tricky Terrain Precon. Maybe it's at the bottom, though. I could see it also being at the bottom.
I think so, too. I mean, even if it went down to like 7 or something, I wouldn't feel too bad because I bought this at 30 like 6 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was a $30 card, so the fact that it's $9 and still very, like, the text box is the same, actually. You know, it still does the same thing in Commander. It just costs 33% of what it used to.
I mean, Tricky Terrain just had such good reprints. I'm happy this was in there. This needed it for a really long time. I was building Sylvala, and that deck was really expensive to put together. This, Craterhoof, a bunch of other green staples, that really ate up my budget. But now that it's $9, I would be a little bit happier to pick it up today.
Oh, yeah. Now, we can't talk about MH3 reprints without talking about the Allied Fetch Lands, which are back. They're finally back since, what? Khans of Tarkir was like the last printing of them?
I think so. I mean, I had Bloodstained Mire. I bought that a few years ago, also at 30-something.
Yeah, those were basically bare minimum 25 for like Windswept Teeth, all the way up to 40-ish for the blue ones. But now they're like $14 at the cheapest, up to $19. It's way cheaper. And Fetch Lands, if you haven't played with them, because they've been somewhat prohibitively expensive, now you can maybe scoop 1 or 2 up for a deck, and they are literally the best mana-fixing lands ever printed.
I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, like maybe last month or the month before, but the enemy ones were starting to go up because everyone was revving up for Modern Horizons 3, but now that these are out, these are going to be like bottoming out around the 14-ish. They might be a little bit lower, maybe at like the 12-ish if you give it a couple weeks, but this is the lowest it's going to be. I can't ever see these going below 10 because the enemy ones never did.
Yeah, the MH3, I think it's been out for long enough that we're probably at the bottom. It's been, what, almost a month, right?
Oh,
it's hard
time
to
goes
say.
by so
Look,
fast.
It's hard to say. Assassin's Creed came and went already, and now we're prepping for Bloomborough. So Allied Fetches, your friendly reminder that they are much more affordable than they used to be. So if you were holding out for like your most powerful deck, please get every Allied Fetch you can now. You won't regret it later.
I have to pick up like 10. The next one that we have on here is Pick Your Poison at $3. This is a common, but it's so good. Single green for a sorcery. Each opponent sacks an artifact, an enchantment, or a creature with flying. So bare minimum, you know that you're going to be getting the best thing off the field. And best case scenario, you could be playing this turn 1 if you go like 4th or something and get rid of a bunch of soul rings.
It's a really low mana investment, and you get a 3-for-1 out of it, which is par, right? We have 3 opponents, so we have to balance it out. So this is kind of like how is this as good as getting a 1-for-1 in a 1v1, but we're getting rid of 3 things in a 4-player game, and the mana value of them can vary wildly. We could be taking out signets, but even if we are, it's kind of the worst case scenario. That's still taking out 6 mana for 1 mana. Like, the mana advantage off this card is huge, and being able to snipe flyers in the late game is like something I never expected this card to do very well. Like, if somebody plays 1 big dragon or their commander is flying, it's like, I'll just kill it.
I love the versatility of this card. I have killed 1 big dragon in the late game with this card. I have killed a soul ring and a treasure very early in the game. I've killed a Rhystic Study with this. It feels good regardless because it's such low mana investment.
It also gets around hexproof and indestructible. Doesn't care about that at all. This thing is one of the best answers to the 1 ring right now. The 1 ring is so annoying. I'm happy, like, as a 1 ring player, I'll slam it on turn 4. I don't care. I'm drawing cards. That leaves it vulnerable to pick your poison, which is like such a great answer to that. Can you imagine being able to answer 1 ring with the pick your poison?
Yeah, it's just all, or at least a lot of the targeted removal for artifacts is usually just destroy. So it's so nice to have sacrifice on one. It's so hard to find like exile target enchantment and like the greenish colors.
If you're really struggling with like specifically indestructible things, you could also go for like Masked Vandal, but the effects are few and far between. And I was excited when this card was 50 cents, but it looks like it's starting to creep up. You know, the hype is here. This is probably just going to be a commander staple for a very long time.
We were talking about speccing on it at like $1, and I was like, ooh, for a common though, that doesn't feel good. But now I wish I did because it's $3.
Should have done it. All right, number 4. Not that we number these anyway. Achroma's Will. Also a reprint from an MH3 Precon. This was in the Energy one?
I think so. That needed closers, right?
Yeah, I think this was in the Energy Precon. It's $13, and it gives your creatures like 2 different chunks of abilities. I think, off the top of my head, because we forgot to write down what this card did, I think it's like flying, double strike, protection from all colors, and then there's like indestructible, lifelink, vigilance, or something like that. It's the freest attack ever. If you control your commander, you can choose both, and then it basically just kills 1 or 2 players.
And it just gains you 1 or 2 players worth of life. It's just a very powerful card for 4 mana. And it's like one of the best things you can do as a finisher if you're doing a combat-based finish.
So the fact that one of the best white finishers ever got reprinted means, of course, we're going to talk about it on the show, because now it's down to $13. And I think it was sitting up at like, was it 30?
I think so. Usually, like, Achroma's Will, Jessica's Will usually sit up at around that like 20-ish, 30-ish, depending on how many reprints it had. I think Achroma's Will also got reprinted in something else prior, if I remember correctly.
Like the Dinosaur Precon?
Yeah, I think it was reprinted there. So I'm happy that with a couple reprints in Precons, it is creeping down to a more affordable price.
But I can always see these cards go up. They're staples. They don't ask anything of you other than put your commander on the battlefield. If you have creatures, this will end games. It's like a slightly fairer white Craterhoof, kind of. Like, but I'm not talking about Moonshaker Cavalry. That is also a slightly fairer white Craterhoof.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, yes, Craterhoof has the trample and the big stats, but also that's not giving me life. That's not giving me sustain if I need it later in the game.
Yeah, if you're scared about the last person left alive, you're like, oh, okay, I'm at 100 now. My creatures are untapped. Your move. Like, there's no one else to help you.
I really like Achroma's Will a lot. I love the big punchy decks, and I love the fact that I can gain some life and take out a couple players too. But Moxfield, the best place online to build a deck.
This early?
Yes, this early.
Wow.
We love Moxfield. We wanted to talk about it almost as early as possible, but we couldn't do it before we started talking about cards.
Moxfield, if you have cards and you want to put them in the same place, that's called a deck, and Moxfield will help you with that, no problem. That's their entire thing, actually. When you go to Moxfield, you make an account, you follow the Nitpicking Nerds. Those are the only prerequisites. Now you're free to roam around and build decks as you please.
It's not even decks. You can build lists on there because we have the entire Commander Cube on there, and you can sort it by tags. Beezy has it all tagged up as like...
It's tagged up.
Yeah, with all of the archetypes in there, and you could do that too. You don't have to just have the 100-card Commander special or like, you know, your draft deck or whatever. You can make lists on wherever you want. I have a list about what cards I need to buy.
You could make a list of most worth buying cards. I mean, we'll come for you if you do that, but you could make the list and you just keep putting them out there to show to people. So we're going to go to the next cards. This is a cycle of cards with one exception. This is a medallion cycle, also reprinted in MH3. These are very important reprints. We have to tell you about them. We're talking about Pearl Medallion, Sapphire Medallion, Jet Medallion, and Emerald Medallion. They make your cards of certain colors cost one less. They are between $2.79 and $6. The exception is Ruby at 12 or maybe even more at this point. There's a Ruby Storm deck in Modern that's just going off, and all the cards in that deck are super expensive right now.
I mean, Ruby's having its time in the sun. You know, it's really nice to see that because it's Sapphire that's really up there. And I know we talked about medallions last year because of the reprint in Commander Masters, but they're even cheaper now. I didn't ever think I'd see medallions sub 10, but this is an amazing pickup, especially if you make a ton of monocolor decks.
Yeah, basically any monocolor deck wants the medallion of its color. Even the green one, which is the worst one, because green has a lot of like other ways to ramp. It could still be good. I guess the only reason you wouldn't want these is if you have a lot of cards that cost just a single white mana. You wouldn't want Pearl Medallion because you can't reduce those. Just keep that in mind when you do the math for it. But most monocolor decks definitely want this. If you cast, it's like a 2-mana mana rock, but if you cast more than one spell a turn, it just makes more than one mana. It kind of like generates a mana for each spell you cast.
Just the $5 range for medallions. That feels so good. I hope they keep reprinting these until they're as cheap as like talismans.
Yeah, even Ruby at 12 is probably lower than it used to be like a year ago, right?
Yeah, I think at its like lowest, I think I saw it at like 11, 12. This feels about right.
Yeah, it's now, it like went down because it was reprinted, and then it sort of just went back up to where it was before. So you can get Ruby without feeling that bad. But the other 4 are like a steal right now. And we have like, we opened a lot of MH3 products, so we have like a stockpile of medallions now. And we're like, we're not getting rid of these.
You know, if I built more monocolor decks, I would be using them in a heartbeat.
If you ever built a monocolor deck, you might use one.
It would all be over.
Then you'll see.
The next card is a card for card draw. It's Mystic Remora at $8.50. This is 1 blue mana, or like a single blue mana, not like 1 in a blue, for an enchantment that says cumulative upkeep 1. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell while this is out, they can either pay for or have you draw a card.
What a choice.
So they are always either going to be holding back their spells if you play this early enough, or they're just going to be giving you cards.
Yeah, I've had this. I mean, this is no question. This is a blue staple. It's one of the best blue cards in the format. It's probably like top 10 or top 15. It goes in literally every deck. I think people are starting to catch on because Ristic Study is up in the 20s or 30s at this point, and this card was 4 for a long time, and it's only gotten printed more times, but the price is only going up because the demand is higher. So I would say scoop them up now for your blue decks in the future before this goes up past 10, because you know it's gonna. You know they're not gonna put this in like Bloomburrow. It's a cumulative upkeep card. It's so hard to reprint.
I'm really surprised to see this as low as it is because Ristic's at like 50, I think. Because that's the lowest I've seen in a really long time. Like I think I saw it at lowest at like 45 or something. So to see Mystic Remora, something that is usually in the Mystic Ristic combo or like card draw suite, you know, I'm very happy to see it at 849. I think this is pretty good because it was reprinted in like there's that Secret Lair it was reprinted, and then it's been a little bit of a sleeper, I think, sometimes because it is in the old border printing, you know?
Yep. This is a card that can be better than Ristic Study, which is just like mind-blowing to even say. But if you haven't played with Mystic Remora, it has higher highs and lower lows. Sometimes when you play Mystic Remora on turn 1, you create an emblem with opponents can't cast non-creature spells for as long as you keep it out, because they have a bunch that they're holding back and they don't want you to get, you know, ridiculous card advantage, so they just don't play anything, and then you can sort of advance your board. You're also paying for cumulative upkeep, but there's definitely like advantage there. And there's the other mode of like someone just says, sorry guys, I need to play my spells this turn. Signet, you know, ramp spell, card draw spell, and you're like, okay, draw. They're more likely to run spells into Mystic Remora because they cannot pay. They can't ever pay. So they don't know, especially if it's like turn 5, they don't know how long you're going to keep it out. So you're just going to get massive advantage. This swings games in your favor.
I know that every time I have this out and BZ's like, okay, guys, don't feed the fish. Like, we are going to be playing responsibly. And someone's like, okay, Soul Ring into Talisman. And he's just like,
I'm like, well, never mind.
Okay, cool. I guess I'll do it too because what does it matter at this point?
Yeah, now nothing matters. I'm just going to feed this stupid fish. But yeah, if they feed the fish, that's all better for you. That's why you buy fishes, right?
Yeah. This is just a great card to help with card draw.
Let's move on to our next card. This is Outcaster Trailblazer, $4.49. This is from Thunder Junction. It's 2 and a green for a 4/2. When it enters the battlefield, add 1 mana of any color, kind of random. Whenever another creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. And the reason that other ability is relevant is because it has plot for 2 and a green. So I can pay 2 and a green, exile this face up, and then on a later turn, I can play it for free. Then it'll generate extra mana from it entering, and now I've got all the resources ready. I'm completely untapped to play all of my 4-power creatures and draw a bunch of cards off of this.
I think plot was slept on a lot, and I think this is a really good card for that kind of mechanic because you would pay 2 and a green to have whenever another creature with power 4 or greater ETBs draw a card anyways, because we have that on a lot of cards to begin with. But just being able to set it up and then take advantage of it immediately and also refund a mana, I think that is a sick deal.
It gives you a lot of options. There's kind of just so much going on with this card. Like, I think the reason that we don't see plot in Commander is just because there's not that many good Commander cards with plot. It was more of a limited mechanic. There's a lot of commons and uncommons. So there's like the Tormenting Voice with plot, and there's this. And I'm really struggling to name like more cards with plot. There's the one that says, sacrifice any number of permanents, then draw that many cards. I think that card's okay. But this is like, it gives you that flexibility. It's the same cost whether you cast it or plot it. So if you've got the mana to cast it right now, just do it. It essentially only costs 2 the turn you play it if you can follow it up with something. And then as soon as you start drawing cards, this thing's replacing itself. It's kind of just like a little mini threat by itself. But I think also that adding a mana when it enters is like a really weird potential like combo card. I don't want to say combo, but when you can like bounce this and flicker it and like do stuff for free, maybe with like a displacer kitten, you can just start profiting mana. It's so weird.
Plus, if you have anything that says like whenever you cast a spell from exile or that sort, this counts for it in plot. So you can get like triggers off things like Passionate Archaeologist if you can run that, Keeper of Secrets, etc.
Yeah, that's so sweet. I think this card, don't sleep on it, because I think a year from now, we're going to be regretting not buying Outcast or Trailblazer at $4.49 from Card Kingdom, actually.
I think it goes in a lot of big green stompy decks. Moving on to another MH3 card. This is one of our favorites. This is the Black Flare, Flare of Malice at $6. Flare of Malice is a 2 black instant, but you can cast it for free if you sack a non-token creature that is black. And each opponent sacks a creature or planeswalker with the greatest mana value among all the creatures and planeswalkers they control. That is usually pretty bad at a 4 mana rate, but for free with an upside if you have death triggers, which black likes to do. I think this is great. And at $6, I think that's the lowest we're going to see it for a while.
That's the thing about, I don't even know if 4 mana to do that is bad. 4 mana to do that is, I think, the most I will ever pay to do that. But there's a lot of effects that are like Unexplained Absence, where it's like get rid of your opponent's best thing for 4 mana, and it's each opponent. Like, I think that's still okay. And so then being able to cast it for free just turns this card into like an absolute, staple. It's so good.
I mean, I think I'm a little bit spoiled because we have things like Extract a Confession with the with collecting evidence, and we have Soul Shatter and that sort of thing. So I'm a little bit spoiled because it's only creatures at this point, and Unexplained Absence is non-land permanents. However, this is so good. And the fact that you could probably get death triggers off it because that's what you want to do in black usually. I love this card, and I'm very surprised to see it at $6. I thought it would shoot up and be up there with the more of the likes of like Flare of Denial, which I think is much higher.
Extract a Confession is pretty cool, but even that card says greatest power, and that can sometimes vary. Like, the creature with the greatest power isn't always the creature you want to kill, but the creature with the highest mana value that your opponents have is the creature they put the most work into getting onto the battlefield. It's probably the creature you want to get rid of.
I just really like this. I'm trying to put this in basically every deck that can run it for the most part, as long as it has a heavy black creature theme. I love this card.
I'm starting to think that this card can just go in a lot of different decks, because if you have a lot, as long as you have a lot of, not a lot, like you have to have a solid amount of non-token black creatures, which is just kind of saying you're a black deck, right? I don't think that's really, those Venn diagrams are a circle. But you can also, even if you're not actively throwing your creatures away like some black decks want to do, if somebody tries to remove your creature, you can just respond, sack it to the Flare, and now you get a 0 mana 3-for-1.
Having this sacrifice, I like maybe this is controversial, but like I like this better than if we had a bunch of spells that was like the Force of Will type deal where you could exile a card from your hand. I like this even better. I think this just opens up so many more possibilities.
The upside is bigger when you cast this for free. It's like, oh, I sack a creature? I don't care. I didn't want this creature. Like, I put this creature in my deck to be sacrificed half the time. Or you're trying to kill my creature and I just respond with it. And that's the thing about these types of effects. That's very unique. If there's like any card that says sacrifice a creature to get an effect usually costs mana. So you have to actively hold up that mana, not use it on your turn, to then hope that somebody plays into your trap, and then you go, haha, got you. This is like I don't care what happens. This card cannot go bad for me. I literally do not care. If you want to kill one of my things, I'm going to fire it off for free. If you don't, I might fire it off for free on a different creature. It's literally the best.
Yeah, usually having the as an additional cost sack a creature doesn't always feel that great, but instead sack a creature to pay for it, that feels so good.
Soul Shatter is going up in price, and I hope that it's at least because we keep like singing the praises of that card because it's so good. And this is, I think, so much better. So pick up your flares now, because if the world was run by BZs and Mias, it would be a $20 card.
It really would. The next card is a card that I'm seeing a lot in life gain decks. That's the Gaffer. This is a 3-mana creature that says at the beginning of each end step, if you gain 3 or more life, you draw a card. This is a great way to have a card drawing engine in your life gain decks. I just put this in my newest Orzhov deck.
This is weird, and maybe people won't agree with me, but I feel like whenever I try to build a life gain deck, I just don't, there's not enough life gain payoffs. I feel like this is one of the life gain payoffs I've been excited about, and I haven't been like I've been looking at life gain decks, and I put it together, and I'm like, this just gains life, but like why? And this is a reason to gain life. It's only $5 too. It's like very strong. 3 life is very low, and drawing a card is pretty high upside.
I really like this too because that is just one extort trigger. If you keep up like a 1-mana spell plus you keep up the extort on it, you can be getting this on other people's turns too. In theory, you could get this on everybody's turn because it says each end step. I think that's a lot of value.
Yeah, you just built a Sorin deck. Sorin is the only and first commander with extort, I'm pretty sure. So in that deck, any spell you cast at instant speed, tack a mana on, and now you draw a card.
I mean, if you have a life-linking blocker that's power 3 or greater, you can be getting cards too. I think it's something that people really need to watch out for in this deck because it's going to be such a powerhouse.
Yeah, super, super great. I don't want a Johnny's Pride mate. I want the Gaffer. That's not even close. I would much prefer to gain cards than to gain power. Stay away from some of the trap life gain payoffs. They can make your deck slower.
I definitely think so. I love extort a lot, but I feel like sometimes it's a little bit lacking. So I am happy that this is like a better version of like the payoff suite, as you mentioned.
Next up, we're going to go to a land that I am going to read and then let Mia talk about because she plays it more than anyone I've ever seen. Minas Tirith, $6. It enters untapped. If you have a legendary creature, it makes a white mana, and you can pay 1 and a white and tap it to draw a card, but only if you attack with 2 or more creatures this turn.
I think people are sleeping on this land. I think this is a great one. I think that card draw is so hard to come by in white, and when you do, it's always conditional. That's your welcoming vampires for your white weenie decks. That's your gaffers for life gain decks. And usually white isn't trying to combo off, so you're trying to attack. And I think that having this in your suite of white cards to replace for a plains or even a less effective white source than this, I love to have. I would rather put this in than Igonjo in my decks. I think that this is just a very cheap way to draw cards, and I think that attacking with 2 or more creatures is very easy, especially in decks where you're trying to do that, to begin with. Like even early, you can start getting this running.
What is the opportunity cost of this card? It's very low.
It's very low.
You have legendary creatures. If your commander is 3 or less mana, you should probably just play this card because it means it'll almost always enter the battlefield untapped as a white source, not even a colorless land. This thing is very strong. I'm on the hype train with Mia, but she loves it even more than I do. I have this in every mono white deck I will ever build. I think it also pretty much goes in every 2-color white deck you would ever build. And then I think Mia even goes as far as to play it in 1 or 2, 3 colors. I don't even think it's that wrong. Like, I can't even disagree with it because I see you drawing cards with it. You throw away tokens you don't need, or you make a big attack, take somebody out, then it's like, oh, and I'll refill my hand a little bit.
I have it in Edgar. It's been so good there because it's like, okay, I guess, either I swing in with these couple of vampires and you'll either block them and they'll die. I don't really care. I can make more, but I need the cards to make more of them. So I'm happy to throw away a couple of power. Maybe they actually swing in and get some damage here and there. But I've having this so early in the game, just having a couple of vampires down, playing this turn 2 or whatever, and then just paying to draw the cards and just making sure that my hand stays filled. I think it's really hard to just get cards a lot in white, especially in the creature heavy decks. So I feel like this just kind of takes the place of that, especially if you can sub it in just for a plains.
I just like playing it in addition to all the card draw you would normally play in, and now you have the situation of I'm going to flood less and screw less because I can hit my land drops because of my land is going to let me draw more cards. Next up, it's a card you may have heard of. It's Blasphemous Act. It's $4.50 right now, which I feel like this card was always like 50 cents, and I think I'm just wrong, and it's been creeping up there. But I think, like me, a lot of people just have 10 Blasphemous Acts sitting somewhere that they just opened in like 2018 or something. But this is a 9 mana instant or sorcery that deals 13 damage. Apparently, I don't know what this card does. 13 damage to all creatures, and it costs 1 less for each creature your opponents control, or each creature on the battlefield. You know what Blasphemous Act does. I don't, but you do.
Blasphemous Act is such a good board wipe because it can be so cheap, and it helps if you have triggers of like if you cast a spell with mana value X or more, because that will count despite having the reduction. Blasphemous Act has been creeping up there despite being reprinted in basically every precon that can run red because it's so good. Usually my brain says it's about 250, but to see it at 450, it makes sense.
This is a card that I think we're all very grateful is less than $20, because if Blasphemous Act was $20, I think people would still play it at the same exact rate. This card is so much better than $4.50. It's a 1 mana board wipe in almost all scenarios, but there are plenty of scenarios where it's an upside of that because you have a creature that's indestructible or bigger than that. And now you blow up everything else for super cheap, spend all the rest of your mana on pumping up this card or playing more haste threats, and then just annihilating people. This card is so good. I would buy this card for any price. Name your price, seller. I will buy Blasphemous Act from you, but $4.50 is probably what you should be aiming for. That's the market value.
I was like, whoa, calm down. This isn't Field of the Dead.
Blank check.
But Blasphemous Act in general is really, really good. I've had just some really good turns with it where, as I mentioned earlier, I have like a Zappai deck and it says, it matters what the mana value is. So cramming it into there, getting triggers because it is such a high mana value, but it only being 1 and then being able to rebuild my board faster than everybody else's. That feels so good.
That feels really, really good. If you don't have a Blasphemous Act on standby, buy 2 because you will need them assuming you play red at all. Next is a card that, we're not building out a cycle of very efficient removal spells that give your opponents 3 choices on what to sacrifice. But there's a second one. It's Shieldred's Edict, $4. It's 1 and a black. Each opponent sacrifices a planeswalker, a non-token creature, or a token creature. And this is like super similar to Pick Your Poison.
These are cards that I love. I love having the versatility. I love the fact that this is instant speed. And you're not going to be using the Planeswalker option that much, but to have a token or non-token creature and having it specified, that means you're usually going to get a big chunk of value. The non-token creature thing is huge.
That's a default.
I love being able to swerve around the fact that it's like, oh, you have a bunch of 1/1 soldiers. How about I pick off your 5 mana creature instead?
Yeah, or your commander. It's like, move aside tokens. I want the commander. I want to get the real creature. I think 1 and a black, each opponent sacrifices a creature is like close. We're close to a card that I would play in my deck, but there's like slightly too many fail cases. Adding on non-token creature, I think would already make this a decent card, but then they're like, no, just in case something's going horribly wrong for you, you can take out a Merit Lage token, or if someone's got a Planeswalker that they're going to ultimate and you can't get through, just take it out. Man, this card, it feels safe having a Shieldred's Edict in your hand. You feel like nothing can go wrong for you on turns, 2 through 5.
Plus, I love the fact that there are a lot of players who will just tap out for their commander and say pass. That, it's the big old...
Not unreasonable.
Yeah, it's like, it's just the please don't hit it, please don't hit it. And it's like, well, if you see that a couple times, you could go, actually, I'll negate all of your turns.
Seriously.
And I'll just take out your commanders and maybe, worst comes to worst, you take out the other person's mana dork. But if you take out 2 big commanders and a mana dork, that's still so much more mana that they paid versus you.
You spent 2 mana. Even if you take out 3 mana dorks, you're still ahead on this exchange. You're slowing them way down. This card is so good. I also like the fact that, like you said, people are going to be tapping out, playing creatures, just playing the game, a reasonable assumption. Firing off a Shieldred's Edict feels like you're taking players out without even trying. You're like, well, all right, there's a big flyer here. You got a bunch of tokens. I'm going to have to take it out with Shieldred's Edict. And just so happens to also work on the other 2 players who are like, dude, I just played my Oracle of Moldiah and, whiffed off of it. I need a thing. It's like, sorry, it's gone.
Sometimes even having the token part is nice, whether you have like a really big mass creature for like an Orcish Bowmasters. We were playing against...
like a Sauron.
Yeah, we were having a friend play, and he was doing like a Slime Against Humanity deck, and the slime was really, really big. I wish I had a Shieldred's Edict there.
Mm-hmm.
The next card is a card that BZ plays more than I do, but I have been coming around to it. It's Pier's Whim at $2.29. 4 mana, you pick friend or foe for everyone. Friends find a land, which would be you and anyone you want to make friends with. Foes actually just say, get rid of an enchantment or artifact.
Yeah, this card, I mean, I thought it was great, but I thought it was more money. And then you read $2.29, and I'm just like, oh, yeah, everybody should just buy this card. It's like it's very, very strong. If you have any card in your deck that's a land that you'd want on the battlefield, more often than not, just put this card in your deck. It's a 3-for-1. It will sacrifice one of their things, an early signet. We're not talking crazy value. You're gonna get a signet from them, a treasure, or maybe like an artifact creature. That's fine, because I would pay 4 mana to go get my best land and put it onto the battlefield. The rest is all upside.
You know, you play this in Bellatrix, and you also played Temple with Discovery in there a long time ago, and I always thought to myself, this is a way better version of Temple with Discovery.
I was so high on Temple with Discovery. Maybe we'll just talk about that real quick. And I've just gotten lower and lower on it. I think there's a lot of ways to tutor up lands now at 4 mana. There's also Sowing Mycospawn from MH3. I think that's also better than Temple with Discovery. I want my best land, and I don't want it blown up. So I don't want to give my opponents a chance to go get a Demolition Field or a Strip Mine, because that's realistically what they should do. I'm going to go get something stupid, something really annoying, and then you're going to have to waste your tutor to kill it, but now nobody's up. Yeah. I'm up a couple basics from the other players who may or may not have searched, but I think I'd rather just pay 4 mana, get a 3-for-1, and then get my best land.
Plus the option to politic. It's like, hey, if I let you get a land right now, you don't attack me for 2 turns or something if someone's getting really mana screwed or something.
You can get a big favor out of that. They will owe you the game.
Yeah, especially if they're color screwed. I think that having the option of friend or foe, you have you don't always have to pick friend, obviously. I've seen VZ go, okay, you guys know what to do. Get rid of your best. Do
we look like friends right now?
but having the option to make friends, I really like having that stapled onto a card.
I really love this card. I think I also had a game that came up where somebody was mana screwed, and we were about to say, hey, go tutor a land and put it on top. We're trying to everyone play the game. But I was like, wait a minute. No, I can, within the rules of Magic, play this card correctly and literally give you a land just because I want you to be able to play the game. I think that's a nice mode to have on cards. I almost wish there was more cards like this, but it's a little hard to just print cards that say, hey, if you feel like it, give an opponent a land.
Yeah, I'm very surprised to see this at under $3 too. Wow. I thought this was a $6 card.
I would easily pay $6 for this. It would still be on here. So the fact that it's 2, pick it up just in case it goes up. I think this card's very, very strong. Next up is a removal spell that everybody, including us, forgot about, and it's time to actually put it in our decks. Before it was a warm up, when the card came out, but now we should probably put Cyber Conversion in our decks. It's a $3 instant for blue. You turn a creature face down as a 2/2 artifact, Cybermen. This is like a reality shift. I see very few differences. The only difference really is that it's blue, so it's slightly harder to cast, but in a mono or 2-color deck, it's irrelevant what this costs. It's still very easy to cast in those decks. And it can also shut down commanders and keep them stuck on the field. I need to get this card. I don't know what I was doing. I forgot, I guess.
Turn creature face down. This is just so hard to interact with. Kenner's Transformation is one of those cards where if an enchantment board wipe gets swept off the field, at least you have your creature back in the state it was. But if this gets turned face down, it is so hard to interact with it. Please swing at me so I can kill it. Please.
Yeah, you do have a blocker. It's not permanent. Eventually this thing's going to attack somebody who has to block it, or it'll chump block something. But it's also your commander, and you can't say no to this. You can't go, oh, well, instead of turning her face down, I'm just going to put it back in the command zone. It's nope. I think on any other, if we want to talk about non-commander creatures, it's functionally the same as a reality shift. The creature is not in the graveyard. It's like a weird version of removed. It does go to the graveyard if the face down Cyberman dies, but this keeps the creature off, out of the graveyard and off the board, which is just more than I could ever hope for. I think this belongs in the elite color pie break blue suite of Rapid Hybridization, Pongify, Resculpt, Reality Shift, and now Cyber Conversion. I think they're all in the same boat.
I can see this creeping up too. Isn't Pongify really expensive or something, or at least way more expensive than this? Or am I thinking of Rapid Hybrid?
All 4 of the cards I just mentioned were expensive until getting a reprint. Pongify and Rapid are still $3 plus.
Okay, I was yeah, because I think it was Rapid Hybrid. I think I remember seeing it at $9.
I think it might have been, honestly, at one point. It just depends on when they've gotten reprinted. They will go up if not. And how much Doctor Who did you open, dear listener? I opened very little. How about you?
I tried not to open too much of that set.
This could be a card that rises to the top for that set because nobody was that excited about it. But this is a card that I am excited about. So I'm going to have to get some just on the off chance that it might go up.
The next card is, you guessed it, a Modern Horizons 3 reprint. It's Recruiter of the Guard at $8. 2 and a white for a 1/1. ETB, you can search your library for a creature card with toughness 2 or less. Put in your hand, then shuffle.
Yeah, this is a card that used to be $20, $30 back when it was in its heyday. And I mean, it kind of still is in its heyday because it just got a reprint, so more people can afford it and access it. It's like a third of the price it used to be. This is a toolbox card. You don't really want to play a 3-mana 1/1 that finds you only a couple different creatures in your deck. But when this can find you any number of 20 creatures in your deck, you're paying the mana for the versatility of tutor your best creature, basically. There's a couple of notable ones this can find. If you're really starved for a life or something and it's the early game and you want to gain life, Sarah Ascendant this can get. That's very annoying. If you need cards, you can get a Mentor of the Meek. If you need removal, Solitude is a very good pairing with this thing.
There's also Dothy Voidwalker that's really good in here if your colors can handle it. I just really like the, creature tutors and stuff because you can also flicker them if you want to get more things from them. And I think that's a lot of versatility.
Yeah, that's where this gets really nasty, is when you start flickering this or you reduce the cost and you can keep replaying it somehow, bounce it back to your hand, just get value over and over. And this can somehow be a threat that your opponents are do we have to kill Recruiter of the Guard? Sometimes you have to kill Recruiter of the Guard, and I would not be ashamed of it. It's very, very annoying, especially after the first time. The first time it's all right, I'll give you that one. Don't do it again. And if you do, I'm going to cry.
Yeah, especially if you could just chain together little creatures that just either pump each other or just get make you untouchable. It is pretty easy to do with all this value.
It's a must play in a blue-white flicker deck. And any white weenie deck wants this. I have this in my mono white deck, and I've never upset to draw it. How could I be? It's any creature in my deck, basically.
It really is. But we are moving on to our speculation game.
The most fun part of the most worth buying.
This is our little game where we pick a card every month, and we buy 5 copies of it, and we see between each other whether the cards go up or down.
Yes, we're going to compare at the end of the year, and we're just going to go month by month until then. My previous spec went up $0.00, so I am not winning this month. My current spec is Siege Gang Lieutenant from MH3 Commander Precons. It's $1.49 right now, and I think this card is fantastic. I think it's a red pseudo staple where every combat you have your commander, you get 2 1/1 goblins. This thing also sacrifices them. That's kind of a lesser point. But just making 2 tokens for free every turn because I play the game. What deck doesn't want this? What deck doesn't want their commander? I don't know.
I mean, this is a great card. As BZ mentioned that he was speccing on this, I actually said, I actually needed one. Can we get more than 5?
I bought 8 because we're gonna use a couple, and then we have the spec cards set aside.
I can see this going up. I have a Perforos deck. I'll need it.
Everything. Tokens, goblins, sacrifice, commander, any deck with 2 commanders that doesn't trigger twice, but it'll be more of a guarantee that you have your commander. There's just so many decks that just automatically want this.
Yeah, the ETB triggers, if you have a dies triggers with the little guys, they really, really can work well. My previous spec went up 10 cents, so I am winning, but on basically a technicality.
Hey, I'm losing. That's fine. I can live with that.
My spec this month is Spymaster's Vault. This is a land from MH3 that it's a black source, but you can also have a creature connive if a bunch of creatures died this turn. It's $1.79, and I think people are sleeping on this card.
Yeah, if any creatures survive a board wipe or you can make one afterwards, you can connive 20, but that's the best case scenario. We're just talking cast Flare of Malice, sacrifice a creature, you all sacrifice a creature, play a Cursed Marauder, you all sacrifice a creature including me. Now, either one of those is connive 4. Draw 4, discard 4, put multiple counters on the creature. It fills your graveyard with exactly what you need. You can get serious dredge value off this. That's a slightly more corner case, but I'm just thinking about it. Serious dredge value. It can fill your graveyard. It can trigger madness, discard. It is this card, all while being a basically free black source to just play.
I think people are so hyped on the flares and the reprints, and I understand it. But I think this fell to the wayside despite us being yeah, this is the best land of this cycle. Because I think the green one is just having just a really good time in Mon right now. And this kind of, everyone's well, this is free, I guess, to put in our decks. But in Commander,
it's the best one in this cycle.
Yeah, it's for Commander, when you have 3 other people, you have to worry about their stuff dying. You could be getting way more triggers off this.
Somebody else could have a really good sacrifice turn, and you're all right, can I have 6? And they're oh, shoot, yeah, I wasn't thinking about that. It's super cool. So those are our specs. If you want to see what we spec'd on last month and what our most worth buying recommendations are that I think still apply, the most worth buying is right here. You got to click on it right now.